Hi, my name is Rachel and this is lesson 6 of my Korean speaking series. Now if you are brand new to Korean and if you haven't watched any of my previous videos, then you might want to start with lesson 1, but you can also just go ahead and watch this video and then just see how hard it is as you get going. Last video we went over how to put 하다 verbs in the present tense, and today we're going to go over what I call the verbs. That's not their official name, it's just what I'm going to call them for the sake of this video. But today we're going to talk about how to put those verbs into the present tense too. Now if you already know this grammar and you want some faster practice, then you can go ahead and skip ahead to the practice round right here. But if this is your first time watching, then I recommend taking it slow, pausing as you need, and taking your time to answer each question. All of the vocabulary that you will need for this lesson has been from the previous videos, and it will also be in the description box below. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the other verbs today. Now last video we did 하다 verbs, so just a really quick review of those 하다 verbs. 하다 means to do, and last time we learned 연습하다, 공부하다, and 청소하다. To practice, to study, to clean. Now because 하다 means to do, this directly translates to do practice, to do studying, to do cleaning. And in order to conjugate 하다 verbs into the present tense, first you will drop 다, and then you will change 하 into 해. And finally, in order to make this polite, add 요. 연습해요. 공부해요. 청소해요. But what about those other verbs? Here is a list of some other verbs that are not 하다 verbs. This is each verb's dictionary form, and it's how you will likely learn it in the first place, but you cannot say it like this in a sentence. So we're going to learn how to conjugate some of these into the present tense today. And the only thing that you have to pay attention to is the final vowel before 다. So in 먹다, that would be 어. In 마시다, there are two vowels, but we only care about the last one right before 다, which would be 이. In 뛰다, that would be 의. 살다, 아. And as for the rest of them, go ahead and try to find the final vowel before I do. 아, 우, 아, 이, 아, and 우. Now the first thing that you will do for all verbs is you will drop 다. And then you will add either a or 어. But the question is, which one do we add? The main thing to keep in mind right now is if the final vowel is a or 오, which in our list here, that would be these guys. So let's go ahead and put them in our list over here. And because all of these are a vowels and we don't have an o vowel in here, let's go ahead and change 알다 into 보다 so we can get an o example in here. Okay, now for all verbs, you will drop 다 and add a. Okay, so the rule that you need to remember is if the final vowel is a or o, you will add a. So back with our list here, drop 다, add a. But let's take a look at these two right here. Let's start with 보아. If you say 보아 many times, really, really fast, 보아, 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 it ends up merging together into 보아. Both of these are correct. 보아 is more for official text in writing, but the one that you will most often see, hear, and say is 보아. So we're going to put this one back into our list as 보아. Next we have 가아. Go ahead and also say this one many, many times, very, very fast. This one is actually incorrect. Because of these two vowels in a row like this, it's actually very hard to say, and the Korean people would agree, which is why this is technically incorrect. And these vowels just end up merging together into making the one vowel, so ka'a is ka. So we're going to put it back into our list as just ka, as well as in our list over here. Now this is their casual form, and you are welcome to use the casual form today, but I am going to stick with using the polite form with all of our examples. So in order to make all of these polite, you are going to add, of course, 요. Now let's finally go over the meaning of all of these guys. So 살아요 comes from 살다, which means to live. 봐요 comes from 보다, which means to see, to watch, or to look. 가요 comes from 가다, which is to go. 찾아요 comes from 찾다, which is to look for or to find. And 앉아요 comes from 앉다, which is to sit. Okay, repeat after me. 살아요. 화요. 가요. 찾아요. And this 지읒 carries over into the empty vowel, so the pronunciation is 찾아요. 찾아요. 앉아요. And again, this 지읒 carries over into the empty vowel, so the pronunciation becomes 앉아요. 앉아요. Okay, so in our list from earlier, we have now made everything polite, and we've got their definitions, except I didn't give you 알다, which means to know. But what about these other guys right here? We're actually going to worry about these in the next video, and today we're just going to focus on the verbs that you add a to, which would be these 6 right here. And these are the ones that we're going to practice with today, and I'll give you a few more in a little bit. So let's start with some easy sentences today. Let's start with I know. I, 저, plus the topic particle, 는, 저는, know. So we've got our dictionary form 알다, and we know to follow our rules, drop, 다, and then because the final vowel is a, which follows our rule of if the final vowel is a or o, then we add a. So now we will add a. And lastly, let's make it polite, 요. 저는 찾아요. And if we wanted to make this into casual form, 저 changes into 나, and we will drop 요, so we end up with 나는 알아. Now in both of these cases, and really in all cases, you can always drop the subject from the sentence if it's obvious who you're already talking about. And here you could just say 알아요, or just casually 알아. This is a very common way to say I know in Korean, but we're going to go ahead and keep the subject in today just for the sake of extra practice. So 저는 알아요 is how we will practice it, but you are also free to practice the casual form using 나는 instead. Okay, I sit. What do you think? 저는 앉아요. 저는 앉아요. I go. 저는 가요. And just a reminder that 가 is that merging of ka, a vowel, so it's just 가. I look for. 저는 찾아요. I watch. 저는 봐요. And just a reminder that 봐 is a combination of 보아. 봐. I live. 저는 살아요. Now let's make our sentences a little bit more interesting. Do you remember the word at? At loosely translates to 에서. And I say loosely translates because it's really just the location particle, because in English this can translate to at the beach or in the kitchen, or if you're talking about a country, in Korea would also be using 에서. So let's try to say I live in Korea. And the word for Korea is 한국. 한국. Now to say in Korea, 한국에서. 한국에서. So what do you think would be I live in Korea? 저는 한국에서 살아요. 저는 한국에서 살아요. And keep in mind that the verb will always come at the end. All right, let's go ahead and get some countries in for practice here. Sorry, these are all English-speaking countries. I just assume if you're watching my video that you speak English, but I'll go ahead and put some other countries in the description box below. Okay, I live in South Africa. What do you think? 저는 남아공에서 살아요. I live in England. 저는 영국에서 살아요. I live in Australia. 저는 호주에서 살아요. I live in Canada. 저는 캐나다에서 살아요. I live in America. 저는 미국에서 살아요. Okay, now back to the 6 verbs that we have here. Let's practice I go with some more complicated sentences. To say I go was 저는 가요. But this time, let's try I go to school. Well, first we need the word to. To is loosely translated to 에. But if you watched the previous video, then you'll know that 에 also represented time, as in the morning, in the evening, at 8 o'clock, on Monday. Well, here today, 에 represents to, as in towards or in the direction of. So if you wanted to say to the beach, you would say 해변에, 해변에. To my house. 집에, 집에. To school. The word for school is 학교. So to school would be 학교에, 학교에. So I go to school. 저는 학교에 가요. 저는 학교에 가요. Alright, so let's practice with some different locations. I go to the beach. 저는 해변에 가요. I go to the park. 저는 공원에 가요. I go to the library. 저는 도서관에 가요. I go to the kitchen. 저는 부엌에 가요. And for a challenge, I go to the kitchen in the morning. 저는 아침에 부엌에 가요. 저는 아침에 부엌에 가요. Okay, now these are the 6 verbs we just practiced with, but let's go ahead and get 6 new verbs in here. We're not going to practice too long for these. I just mostly want to practice the conjugation rules for them and the basic pronunciation. So let's start with I come to school. 저는 to school, 학교에 come. The dictionary form for come is 오다. So we drop 다 and add 아. But just like 보다 before, if you say 오아 many times very fast, 오아, 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 오아. 오아 merges into 와. And finally, make it polite, 요. 저는 학교에 와요. I get up. Now, 일어나다 can mean to get up as in to wake up, or it can also mean to get up like to get up from your chair or to get up from the ground, like to stand up. Wake up in Korean is 깨어나다, and stand up in Korean is 서다. But 일어나다 covers both of these meanings and it's very often used, so today we're just going to practice 일어나다. So I get up, what do you think? 저는, and the dictionary form, 일어나다, drop 다, add 아. But this na a vowel is very hard to say, so it just merges together into the one vowel, 일어나. And lastly, make it polite, 요. 저는 일어나요. Okay, how about I get up in the morning? 저는 아침에 일어나요. Now let's look at these 3 right here. These 3 are actually a little bit awkward in English without some sort of object in the sentence. Like if you just hear, I buy, I close, I meet. It's a little bit awkward without an object. Like it would be much more natural to say, I buy snacks, I close the door. I meet my friend. So we're just going to practice these really briefly today for the sake of the conjugation rules, starting with 닫다, to close. So I close would be 저는 닫다, we drop 다, add 아, make it polite, 요. 저는 닫아요. Now as for these three right here, these three will conjugate just like 일어나다. So here we've got them here. Let's start with I, 저는, and their dictionary forms. First we will drop 다 and add 아. But once again we have this ah vowel in a row like this. So for all of these they will just merge together into the one vowel like this. And lastly, to make polite, we will add 요. 저는 사요. 저는 나가요. 저는 만나요. Now if we look at 나가다 here, 나가다 means to go out, as in to go out of a building, to go outside, or to go out of a classroom into the hallway. And if you were to drop 저는, I, then that could still mean I go out. But if you were to say it to someone, then it translates a bit more to like the command, go out. And if we were to drop the 요 and just make it casual, then we just have 나가, something you could say to your friends or to children. And if we were to combine these two together, and if we were to say 일어나, get up, and 나가, go out, then we end up with the time that I had to call my boss into my classroom to deal with some boys who were bullying each other, and she just came in and looked at the bullies and said, 일어나, 나가. And it was terrifying. So in summary, here are the 12 verbs that we just practiced. And the rule to keep in mind for today is if the last vowel before 다 is a or o, which in this case would be all of these, you will simply drop 다 and add a. And lastly, merge if necessary. In the case of these right here, this a vowel is rather redundant, so it just becomes the one a vowel. And in the case of these right here, this oa sound tends to merge into wa. And finally, make polite by adding 요. Okay, now let's move on to the practice party, which as always, pause as much as you need and take all the time that you need to answer each question. It will likely be a lot faster, especially if this is your first time watching the video. So please do not hesitate to pause as much as you need. So here are the 12 verbs that we practiced today. Let's just start with some simple sentences. I go. 저는 가요. I sit. 저는 앉아요. I know. 저는 알아요. I meet. 저는 만나요. I watch. 저는 봐요. I get up. 저는 일어나요. I go out. 저는 나가요. I buy. 저는 사요. I close. 저는 닫아요. And some more detailed sentences. I get up in the morning. 저는 아침에 일어나요. I go out in the morning. 저는 아침에 나가요. I go out in the evening. 저는 저녁에 나가요. I go to school. 저는 학교에 가요. I come to school. 저는 학교에 와요. I go to the library. 저는 도서관에 가요. I go to the beach. 저는 해변에 가요. I go to the beach in the evening. 저는 저녁에 해변에 가요. I go to school in the morning. 저는 아침에 학교에 가요. I live in America. 저는 미국에서 살아요. I live in Korea. 저는 한국에서 살아요. I live in South Africa. 저는 남아공에서 살아요. I live in Australia. 저는 호주에서 살아요. And now, cumulative, including some of the 하다 verbs if you watched the previous videos. If you didn't watch the previous video, then just go ahead and give this a try. Maybe you know it anyway. And if not, feel free to stop the video here. But let's go ahead and try a few with our previous verbs. I study. 저는 공부해요. And 공부해요 comes from 공부하다, to study. I study at the library. 저는 도서관에서 공부해요. I swim. 저는 수영해요. 수영해요 coming from 수영하다, to swim. I swim at the beach. 저는 해변에서 수영해요. I clean. 저는 청소해요. 청소해요 comes from 청소하다, to clean. I clean in the mornings. 저는 아침에 청소해요. And lastly, for a bit of a challenge, I go to school in the mornings and I clean in the evenings. 저는 아침에 학교에 가요. 저는 저녁에 청소해요. And this second 저는 is really actually unnecessary. Unlike in English where we have to say I for every single sentence, in Korean they don't have to because it's obvious that you're already talking about yourself. So in the second sentence we can actually just drop it. But okay, that is all I have for you today. I will see you in the next video when we will cover the final type of verbs. So great job today, and I'll see you in the next video.